Jesus. Yeshua is the man's name. It's not Jesus. Jesus is actually a name that didn't exist till more modern times, and the J didn't even exist. So it was really Isus, and Jesus means Hail Zeus. That's actually the definition of the name, Hail Zeus. Christians will adamantly deny that, but that's the facts remain. That's exactly what it means, as they used to worship Zeus back in the day. That's besides the point. Jesus was born at virgin birth. Now his mother, Mary, her mother was also born of a virgin birth. This is something that nobody ever talks about. Nobody ever teaches you this in Bible study. Nobody ever does this. Why? They don't want you to know. Number one. Number two, they don't even know half the time probably. If you go to the Apocrypha text, you discover that Mary's mother was a virgin birth. Why is this significant? It shows that some type of in vitro fertilization technique was being used in ancient times to create a specific bloodline. Mary's mother came down that line, and then she gave birth to Yeshua. If you look at a lot of these records or accounts of quote-unquote mythology in the Greek myths, they talk about these virgin births as well. Yeshua wasn't the only person to come from a virgin birth. There were many, many of these people that were born from virgin births. They all have very, very similar stories. They're all demigods. They're half human, half, not really a god that creates a universe, but they're half advanced being. In this case, Yeshua is half Anunnaki and half human, more direct to the bloodline that way. What is the...
Now, don't get me wrong. When Billy Carson is talking about the Anunnaki storyline, I am with him 100% on what the Anunnaki, what the Sumerians and the Akkadians believed. Where I draw the line is where him and many other people try to validate Jesus, Yeshua, Yashu, as a historical character, because they're skirting the line of staying out of the crosshairs of the overwhelming majority of people by just outright saying, and I'm going to say it for them, the Jesus character, the Yashu character, is a literary creation. He was never a real person. He was never someone who actually walked. Not the Bible version, was never. Now, so let's correct a few things that Billy Carson was saying. As far as the name Jesus, yes, the name Jesus is a transliteration of the name Yashu. Now, it's not Yeshua. During that time frame, Yeshua would not have been a word that was used. His name would have been Yashu. But that's a small minor detail. But it would have been Yashu. Now, the Greeks could not pronounce the name Yashu. So the closest transliteration, not translation, but transliteration, meaning that what is the closest word that we could use that would identify the same meaning? That became Ius. Ius is not Zeus. And then in the Latin, it became Isus. And then when the J was invented, it became Jesus. None of them are translations of the name Yashu, but they are transliterations to mean a saving Messiah, or the most loose version, a Zeus that saves, meaning a God that saves. They are not trying to say Hail Zeus. That is a popular misconception of that teaching, of that doctrine. But it is a Messiah or a God that saves. So it is a transliteration, not a translation, and the meanings is completely different. Now, there are other writings that talks about the fact that Mary was a virgin, was born from a virgin birth herself, and this was created by the Catholic Church in order to pretty much deify Mary. So he's absolutely correct in that one. The question would then be, why isn't that part of your Bible? Why isn't that part of your Bible? I mean, I understand. I know why. The canon had been closed by the time this doctrine was created, so therefore they couldn't add more books to the Bible. And of course, the Protestant Bibles all picks up from that Catholic Bible. And originally, Protestant Bibles had the Apocrypha in it, which was the same as the Catholic book, the Catholic Bible. But for printing reasons, printing cost reasons, the Apocrypha in the late 1800s, early 1900s was now being excluded from your Protestant Bibles, which is why most of your Protestant Bibles don't have the Apocrypha in it. But the point is, these stories are not part of the Bible, but it's part of a doctrine that was taught by Christians. And so why is it taught? Now, the reason why I bring that part up is because Billy Carson goes further into merging the Anunnaki story with the Jesus story to say that since there are many stories of these virgin births, and some of the pictures, I don't know if he meant those exact pictures or those deities to which he put up there, like putting Horus up there would be disingenuous, because Horus was not born from a virgin birth, but he was born from a miraculous birth, meaning Osiris' body was cut up, Isis put his body back together, couldn't find his ping ping, put an obelisk in the place of his ping ping, and she hovered above it. Isis was never a virgin. Well, she wasn't a virgin at that point, but she hovered above it, and she got pregnant. Is one of the primary Kemetic stories. So not a virgin birth, but a miraculous birth. But there are other instances of virgin birth, and there are instances of miraculous birth. Hell, whether a woman is a virgin or not, just getting impregnated by a god, like how Zeus impregnated Achilles' mother or Hercules' mother, those were amazing births. So these demigods all have these amazing births. But this is not an indication of him taking the Anunnaki story, which talks about the fact that Enlil, Enki, Ninhursag, and Anu came together and decided to make a slave race, and the way it's described in the Sumerian text, they use a format that we would call in vitro fertilization in order to create man in its beginning. He's trying to merge both of those ideas together to create Jesus as an half Anunnaki, half man, a demigod, to put him in the same category as Gilgamesh. But it's not, because during the time frame of the early 1st century, the Jesus stories were being written 40 years to 100 years after the Jesus character was first introduced to the Hellenistic Roman Empire. And so therefore, there were no Anunnaki around, there were no Incas around, there were no Enlils around. These were just literary creations. And even for one of the big differences, and even for the Sumerians, the Sumerian story, when the Sumerians wrote about Enki, Enlil, Ninhursag, and Anu creating man, they are writing at a time frame when the events supposedly happened more than 3,000 years prior to the Sumerians actually writing this. The Epic of Gilgamesh happening 2,000 years, being written down, and happening 2,000 years prior to them being written down. So there's this long length of time between the time frame of the event happening, supposedly, and the writing down of these events, where in the Jesus case, the events of Jesus are written down 40 to 100 years after the so-called Jesus supposedly was walking around. All of them are literary creations, but to mesh those two together is really disingenuous. Is the best word I can use, the most polite word I can use, in order to popularize the story. I would love if people like Billy Carson, Bart Ehrman, would just flat out say Jesus is a literary creation. Never walked on earth. The Bible Jesus never walked on earth. Were there plenty of Messiah types who were claiming to be the Jewish Messiah during the time frame of Jesus? Yes. Yashu being a very popular name, would there have been those named Yashu? Yes. Josephus mentions the fact that there was at least 4 of them during that time frame. So a person claiming to be the Messiah, sure. Killed by Pontius Pilate because he was a ruthless person and his job was to kill all of them who were claiming to be the Jewish Messiah, sure. But let's not confuse people by trying to merge information that don't match or never should be merged together in the first place. But y'all have a great day. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.